Men who sleep 5 hours a night have significantly smaller testicles than those who sleep 7 hours or more. Men who routinely sleep 5 to 6 hours a night have a level of testosterone which is that of someone 10 years older than them. This is how one of the most well-known sleep scientists, Matthew Walker, started his speech at a TED Talk which has over 12 million views. Now think about that fact as a fellow male athlete like myself and how that would affect your performance. Well, as you can know and tell, in this video we're going to be discussing sleep and its relationship to your performance as an athlete, and also how you, just like me, could be achieving that 9-hour plus mark so then we can enhance our performance as much as we can. And if you want some proof on me actually getting 9 hours sleep as I have articulated, then I'll just show you my watch right here. So this is the time of recording. And if we go here, that says 9 hours and 31 minutes of sleep. So hopefully you saw that. If not, I'll probably just play a clip instead. There you go. Anyway, in this video, we're going to be discussing how athletes should view sleep, some key concepts to understand about sleep, important misconceptions to point out about sleep, consequences of a lack of sleep, how much sleep you should be getting as a runner, and how I have been able to get 9 hours sleep, and an action step at the end of the video. So how do athletes view sleep? How should we view sleep? Well, sleep is the foundation for absorbing the adaptation stimulated by training and being able to recover fully to put in that same amount of effort required in training to stimulate those desired adaptations. So think of it as sleep is enhancing. So if we seek to improve our races, we should start getting enough sleep as the key foundation, which, as I discuss and break down some of the key concepts to understand about sleep, you'll start to get a picture on what I mean by this. So examples of high-performance athletes and their opinion on sleep. Well, I watched a recent Netflix documentary called The Last Dance, which showcases the story of the Bulls in their pinnacle years of success, and also their most well-known basketball player, Michael Jordan. And in one of the quotes of Michael Jordan in some of the earlier episodes of the video was, in his earlier years, all he did was he trained, he ate, and he slept. And he's not the only elite athlete to say something like this. Michael Phelps, who is an Olympic swimmer who has won a total of 28 Olympic medals, is also said to say the same thing. All he did was he trained, he ate, and he slept. So obviously it's pretty important they consider to their success. Now, some examples of some extremes an athlete would take to ensure that their sleep was not affected was Roger Federer, a world-class tennis player who has won 8 Wimbledon wins. Reportedly, in the 2015 Wimbledon Championships, he rented out 2 separate houses, one for his young family to stay in, and the other for him and his team to stay in so his sleep wouldn't be affected. And hey, that ain't cheap, renting 2 houses, because these houses weren't small. Another example is once Usain Bolt said this about sleep. Sleep is extremely important to me. I need to rest and recover in order for the training I do to be absorbed. So another way that I like to break it down, that I got off an Irish marathon runner, Stephen Scollum, is think of sleep and training like this. So your body is a sponge, and training is a bucket of water. So every time when you do training, you dip your sponge in that bucket of water and you absorb some of that training, fitness, that's the water. Now, and then afterwards, for you to be able to do that again, you need to rinse out that sponge. That is sleep. Now, if you cut corners and cut time off the amount of time you take to rinse out that sponge, when you put that sponge back in and there may still be some water left over, it can't absorb as much as the first time when it was fully dry. And if you keep repeating this over time, like the compound effect, in a previous video that we discussed about, so check that out here, then if you repeat this over and over again, that sponge gets moldy, which that is injury. So if you want to be able to absorb as much training as you can, be able to dip that sponge in as much as you can into that bucket of water, you're gonna need to get that sleep, to absorb it, to rinse out that sponge. Now, some key concepts to understand about sleep. So, what is sleep? Sleep is an active state of regeneration and restoration. So it's like a battery. It's the part of the time when your phone or you gets to be able to hit 100% again. And we all know how annoying it is when you forget to charge your phone overnight and it's left on 10%. Yeah, you don't get much with your phone that day, do you? Now, there are 4 stages of sleep that we go through, and we cycle in this order. So first we're awake. This is when we first lie on the bed and we're consciously aware of our surroundings. Because obviously when we hit the bed, we don't fall asleep straight away. It takes a bit of time. Now, first stage and second stage of sleep is called light sleep. This is when our body undergoes the cognifying of memories, which are based on the activities that we've done in the day and boosting creativity. So stage 1 is us falling asleep. And then stage 2 is when our muscles start to relax and may jerk. So fun fact, this jerking is called hypergrown jerks. So at this point, we're aware of sleep. We're aware that we are falling asleep, but we're slowly losing aspects of our proprioceptional awareness. So your muscles' awareness of its surroundings. So during this time, when we have a small dream, say we're kicking a soccer ball, we may experience a small jerk of our leg as if we're kicking that soccer ball. I sure have experienced that. Now the next third and fourth stage of sleep is called deep sleep. So this is when, most importantly, growth hormone, this is responsible for muscle tissue growth and repair, occurs. And this is essential for recovery, is released. So according to the community medical centers, 75% of growth hormone is released during this period. The other 25% being straight after your physical activity. So also during this time, the brain flushes waste, such as lactic acid. So if you are awoken during this stage, you may feel disorientated or groggy. So stage 5, the other stage of sleep, is called REM sleep. So this stage is when vivid dreams occur, which is said to be when we go through a self-generated therapy by emotionally processing the events that happened that day. So brain activity in this stage is actually very similar to when you're awake. The only difference is the activity of your eyes and your muscles. So during this page, how it gets its name, so REM stands for rapid eye movement. Your eyes during this phase shut horizontally rapidly. So they move left to right, just like that, very rapidly as you go to sleep. And your muscles during this time period are completely paralyzed, or your voluntary ones. So the theories currently behind these two things is with your eyes, the reason why it's shut and left to right horizontally is it is your way of looking around the world, the dream world that your brain has created. And your muscles paralyzing yourself it's preventing you from acting out those dreams. So imagine if you were dreaming about flying. You might jump out the window if your body wasn't able to paralyze the voluntary muscles to act it out. Now, this cycle repeats itself in this order on an average of 90 minutes, but it can vary individually from being 75 minutes to as long as 130 minutes. Another fun fact about it too is these sleep cycles in men occur 15 to 20 minutes longer than females. Now, important misconception about sleep to point out is these sleep stages amount to higher amounts at different parts of the night. So that deep sleep that we talked about before first occurs in our natural sleep cycle in higher amounts in the first part of the sleep. So say if your normal bedtime is going to bed at 7 p.m. and waking up at 5 a.m., that would happen in the first part of the night, from 7 to 12 o'clock. And then the other part, REM sleep, normally occurs on the second half in high amounts. So that would be, in our example, from 12 to 5 a.m. And the reason why REM happens at that time too is because it's our brain's way of getting us prepared and ready to wake up. So that's why if you woke up in that period, you wouldn't feel as groggy because, yet again, those brain waves are very similar to when we're awake. Only difference is we're paralyzed and our eyes are rapidly moving. So let's just take our example again and talk about what happens if, say, we don't go to bed at the normal time. So let's just say, a normal bedtime, yet again, is 7 p.m. to 5 a.m. Let's just say for some odd reason, we only get to bed at 3 a.m. instead of 7 p.m. Now, what's important to note is when that happens, our body doesn't normally just go back to the script that, the normal rhythm that it goes through. So that being the deep to the REM in high amounts. It actually just starts off where it normally would be along the line in a sleep cycle. So that being following your circadian rhythm, your body clock. So that being said, you're missing a lot of that deep sleep that you'll be getting at the first parts of the night because now you're sleeping much later. You still will get a bit of deep sleep throughout that thing because it's a cycle, remember? But we don't spend as much time in that deep sleep part of that cycle during that time. So if we reflect back on what deep sleep gives us, think about that growth hormone. It's responsible for muscle tissue and muscle repair. If we are missing high amounts of that because we got to bed really late than usual, we're missing a key part of our recovery. So the next day when you go to training, if we go back to that sponge, you haven't been able to rinse out as much of that water, that training stimulus, as you could have if you got that growth hormone. So you're going into the next workout tired and fatigued. Now, that can compound negatively if you don't counteract it. And the same can happen the other way as well, where we only sleep from 7 p.m. to 12 p.m., we're still missing that key component of half. So you're not missing like 20% of sleep, right? But you're actually missing 75% of your REM sleep for that whole night. That can affect you very negatively. Another thing to point out of a misconception about sleep is not like the bank. You can't accumulate a debt and then hope to pay it off on the weekend. So sleep that is lost, you can't ever repay. It's kind of like, because at first I had a bit of struggle understanding it because they're a bit vague like that. That's all they left you with. And you're like, oh, cool, I'm supposed to understand it now. But think of it like it's the opportunity to absorb training that we've lost. We've lost time. So think of it in that way, like in economics, opportunity cost. We lost that chance to get that training. So instead of us going into the next training session fully ready to get that training stimulus again, we're coming into fatigued. So our body, when we put ourselves through that training session again, we're not gonna go up, because this is how fitness works. This is your baseline, and then when you do the fitness, it goes down. But when you recover, you sleep, it goes up, slightly a little bit above what it was before. But if you go into that training session, so you do the training, goes down, you don't get the sleep, so it goes a little bit up, but it's actually below, so you've actually lost fitness, and then you hit that training session again, you're lower than where you were before, and then you may recover. But it's still not going to be at the level that you were before. So you actually lost fitness in that example. So another way that someone broke it down, which I really liked, was in this analogy. If I'm chopping vegetables for dinner and I cut myself with a knife, it takes time to heal. But chances are it's never going to completely heal. There will be a scar. If I cut myself with a knife, then I have a few days, and then for the next few days, I don't cut myself with a knife. The wound will heal, but the scar will remain. I can't cut myself one day and then go several days without cutting myself and expect that it somehow cancels out that one day I cut myself. And I certainly can't say, I only cut myself on the weekdays and make up for it not cutting myself on the weekends. So we still have that scar. Another one is, when you can think about it too, is you're not only losing out on that growth hormone, you're also losing out on you being able to absorb those memories and those lessons that you learned from that day. Because that's mainly what REM sleep's all for, is more for that mental side. And also from emotionally processing all those events that occur that day. So the next day you come in a bit more aggravated, and that just translates negatively. So consequences of a lack of quality sleep. So just to list off a couple examples, because I don't want to make this video too long for you, so your time to physical exhaustion is 30% less. No growth hormone, didn't recover. Your lactic acid buildup is quicker the less sleep you get. So due to your body still carrying over that lactic acid yet to be drained with the brain. And then your injury risk is increased by 60% from getting 5 hours sleep compared to 9 hours sleep in athletes during the on-season. This is found in a study where they surveyed athletes over the course of the on-season, and they asked them how much sleep they were getting, and then organized the data based off their responses. So they put the 9 hours here, 8 hours here, the 7 hours, 5 hours, 4 hours, etc. onto a graph, and found a perfect linear relationship of the less sleep you have, the higher your injury risk. The difference between 9 hours and 5 hours of sleep is a 60% increase of injury risk. And if we look back on those key concepts to understand about sleep, it's not very hard to understand why that's the case. So how much sleep should you be aiming for to fuel your training, for running? Well, a duration between 7 to 9 hours is a healthy mark, which is commonly agreed upon. And if you're an aspiring elite athlete like myself, then you want to be hitting 9 hours plus. So then we get as much as we can out of that sponge, rinsed out. And how they determined this was they start to see negative effects start to occur in the body when you start to sleep under 7 hours. So 7 hours is a minimum. Now, most importantly, how am I able to get 9 hours of sleep each night? Well, first, what I did was I identified my 9-hour sleep zone. So the time when I need to get to bed and when I want to wake up. And how I would work this out is I'll work backwards. So let's just say because you also want to be sleeping and waking up at a consistent about the consistent same time because of your circadian rhythm, your body clock, which will be discussed a little bit later in it. So I said, okay, 6 o'clock. So if I count 9 hours back, or 10 hours back actually, that would be 8 p.m. So my 9 hours sleep window is between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. because between that time, it's 10 hours, right? So I'm factoring in that when I hit the bed, I'm not going to fall asleep straight away. And that will vary. It may take me 20 minutes sometimes. So if I'm in bed by 8 p.m., I'm guaranteed 9 hours sleep when I wake up at 6 a.m. Why? Because I've given myself an hour to fall asleep. So, man, you're going to fall asleep at that time. But only if you don't hinder yourself from other habits, which I'll discuss in a little bit. And then you plan your day backwards. So you plan, okay, if I need to be in bed by 8 p.m., I need to work, what tasks do I need to complete beforehand to ensure that I can be in bed by 8 p.m.? So for me, for example, it's cooking dinner earlier. So when I was living at home, obviously I couldn't tell everyone, dinner must be at 5 p.m. or I'm angry. I could do that. So I had to help out. So then dinner could be cooked earlier. And then afterwards, I had to brush my teeth, have a shower, journal, and read a book, and then I can be in bed. So figure out how long that's going to take you to do that. And then that's when your night routine will start. So for me currently, I'm having dinner at 4 to 5 p.m. So I have enough time to complete all my other tasks beforehand. Now, very important. Number 3, don't consume any blue light 1 to 2 hours before going to bed. This is because it can affect your circadian rhythm, our body clock, which is genetically evolved between light and darkness. Let's turn that back on. So when we first wake up, melatonin production is suppressed in the brain. So melatonin, it's a hormone responsible for signaling to the rest of the body, it's time to go to bed, to sleep. And this increases in volume throughout the day, from when we first wake up to when we go to bed. Because yet again, as it gets darker, we start to get sleepier, and that stimulates more of this sleep pressure that we experience from melatonin. So if we're consuming blue light, so light electronically, artificially, it can suppress those signals in our body, which is promoting alertness over sleepiness, resulting in a harder time for us to fall asleep, because we're actually suppressing the secretion of this melatonin, which is making us feel more alert instead of feeling more sleepy before we go to bed. Now, number 4 is have a sunrise alarm clock, like this one right here I'm using for lighting. So the reason being is, 1, so you can save yourself a traumatic awakening when you first go to bed to those traumatic sounds of those alarm clocks. I sure have a few when I hear them. And instead of it just, and think again, when we think back to our sleep cycle, it gives our body, it's when we have those alarm clocks, it's disrupting our natural rhythm that our body uses to wake ourselves up. Because think about it, you could be in the middle of deep sleep, and then you hear this, and then you feel disorientated and groggy, because your body didn't have the time to work its way back up to light sleep where it can emerge peacefully. Because in those brain waves, it's very slow and deep sleep. So I have this alarm clock, which yet again, it's our circadian rhythm evolves around the light and darkness. So I find that with this alarm clock, I set my time at 6 o'clock, and the 10 minutes beforehand, it starts to bright up the room as if the sun is rising. And what I find is during that time period, I start to become consciously aware that, hey, it's nearly time to wake up, because I can feel the light going across my eyelids, it's a very nice way to wake up. And then you can hear the alarm, which mine's some bird tweets. Now, number 5 is getting sunlight within the first hour of waking. So this relates back to the circadian rhythm, where another part that sets our alertness is cortisol. So what happens is when we get that sunlight in the first part of the day, it starts the body clock. So if you and then that way it starts the correct secretion that you kind of want for that melatonin to start activating and everything. Because if you delay that, then that will start maybe an hour after, or 2 hours before, and then it's like the sleep pressure is like an alarm clock. So then this build up starts happening a little later, and therefore, when you normally want to go to bed, you might not feel as sleepy as compared to when you would normally feel that way. So the idea is to get that sunlight in straight away so it could trigger that cortisol, so that it could trigger all the other mechanisms in your body, so then your clock is the way that you want it to be. Now, number 6, not consuming any substances that will negatively affect your sleep. So an example would be caffeine. Not consuming any caffeine 8 hours before sleep. Now, the reason why caffeine can negatively affect your sleep if you consume it within that time barrier is by way of suppressing the hormone responsible for us feeling sleepy, which is adrenaline. So caffeine, what it does is it actually suppresses us feeling sleepy, because adrenaline is responsible for us to feel sleep. So how that relates to melatonin is that's the hormone that signals to the brain and other areas of the body, hey, it's time to start shifting from day mode to night mode. And adrenaline is therefore triggered to increase in production. So that is what results in you feeling sleepy. Now, what caffeine does directly to that is it actually suppresses the feeling of sleepiness. So that's why when you are feeling exhausted or tired, caffeine can help mitigate those symptoms. Now, another example of another substance that can negatively affect your sleep is alcohol, as it can fragment your sleep by you waking up through the middle of the night. It's also a sedative, trying to knock out your cortex. So seduction is not sleep. So 7, wear a pair of earplugs. So the ones that I currently use at the moment were given to me by my mum, as these were initially designed for swimming. So this piece would go on your nose, keep the water out of your nose, and then these earplugs would actually go on your mouth, your ear. But I don't use the nose pierce because I want to breathe through my nose when I sleep. But yeah, I just whack these little earplugs in, and then boom, I can't hear anything and they stay in my ear perfectly. I did used to use ones that are disposable, but I'd find I would have to constantly lose them, and I had to constantly keep replacing them. Whereas these ones have the same pair for 2 years. You can buy them on Amazon or anywhere. They're called silicone earplugs. So check them out. I'll leave a link in the description on where you can buy them. And the number 8 is make your room as dark and cold as possible. So yet again, as we know of our circadian rhythm, it responds during the nighttime, makes us more sleepy to more darkness, with melatonin production. So you want to keep that. Plus, I don't know about you, but every time when I was in an environment where there was light or noise or when it was really hot, I found it very difficult to go to sleep. So I highly recommend doing that. Like whether you have a fan in your room, you leave the window open, or for light that you can't eliminate, you wear a night mask, which I'm thinking I could make an investment in that in the future. So number 9 is, last one, is only using your bed for sleep. Now, I've heard a lot of people online, they recommend only using your room for sleep. But if you're like me and you live with someone else, you don't really, your room is your private space where you could do your homework and everything like that, which that's how I use it. So how I still serve that purpose is I just reserve bed for sleep. So I'm not reading on it, I'm not lying on it. The only time when I'm using it is for sleep. So psychologically, as soon as my body hits the bed, it knows, hey, it's sleep time. Now, for some action steps for today is to try implementing previously mentioned points I have covered. into your night routine and see what works for you and what doesn't work for you. Now, till next time, it's never too late to start your dreams.